Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Science Rundown. This is Nicholas Capman with the FDA Group. Before we jump into our discussion for today, just a little bit about the FDA Group. We help life science companies in the areas of quality assurance, regulatory affairs, clinical operations, commission and qualification and validation, as well as CMC. We offer 3 different engagement models, which are consulting, staff augmentation, and full-time employee recruitment. So if you ever find yourself in need, just head over to the FDAgroup.com to check us out and get in touch. So today I am speaking with Adam Foresman. Hey, Adam.
Hello. How you doing, Nicholas? Thanks for
I'm,
having me.
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for joining me. So before we jump into our topic for today, which is AI and machine learning in the dental space, could you introduce yourself and your background?
Yes, and then thanks again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Adam Foresman. I'm the head of quality and regulatory affairs for VideaHealth Incorporated. I have 15 years, hard to believe, 15 years, medical device design, QMS, manufacturing, regulatory experience, including 7 years in software as a medical device, SaMD, specifically the dental market. Done some pre-market submissions, statistics, inspections, etc. So,
Excellent. And you work at VideaHealth right now, correct?
yeah, VideaHealth. They're doing some great things there, and it's one of the leading dental AI diagnostic companies out there right now. Mission to improve oral health for 1 billion patients globally. It's been around for 5-6 years now. Formed out of 2018 out of MIT and Harvard, and to date, VideaHealth and myself, we've received 34 AI or machine learning models that have been successfully cleared by the FDA and other jurisdictions throughout the world. And that's going to be my primary focus today, is to talk about regulatory oversight, QMS considerations, et cetera, for AI ML. I'm going to focus primarily on diagnostic aids. I haven't had that much experience in large language models, but I'm sure quite a bit of topics today we'll cover that as well. And just happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's start with the startup landscape. How would you say regulations are impacting that space?
Good question. I think that AI and ML as a diagnostic aid is starting to get some traction out there in the real world. Some of the larger healthcare systems, hospitals, dental organizations are starting to adopt it. It's really helping clinicians in a few different ways, specifically around identifying previously missed detections, some patient education. So some AI can be very user-friendly to explain to a patient what's going on and why you might want to do treatment now and not delay it. And also for administrative tasks. So we've been seeing the early adopters get real value using AI. And now we're starting to see more and more like white papers of collecting real world evidence on using AI that really supplements like the FDA submissions clinical data really well. So I believe in the next couple of years, we're going to start to see some of the maybe more conservative healthcare organizations and dental organizations start to become open to the use of AI as they see some of the other organizations getting success with it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So VideaHealth and yourself recently got 510(k) clearance for the first dental AI application for pediatric patients 3 years and older. Any useful pointers for anyone completing a software as a medical device, AI, or machine learning FDA submission?
Yeah, I think we're very, very proud of that. And there are a few different tips, things that we've learned along the way, I think that would help your users and listeners. I know that a large percentage of your listeners are regulatory professionals themselves in the medical device industry. So there's 3 things I wanted to quickly touch on. Use of Q submissions, some software documentation considerations, and then some pediatric specific things you might want to consider if you're doing a pre-market submission coming up. So the first on Q subs, I know that's a widely used method of manufacturers to communicate with the FDA about an upcoming submission. The process has been around for a while, but in my experience, especially with like a larger electromechanical medical devices, those types of Q-sub meetings have focused on like clinical study design, sample sizes, best practices in that regard. If you're doing an AI ML submission, project coming up soon, you might want to actually talk more about the design itself, not just the testing. So getting some clear alignment with the FDA on the indications for use statement. The FDA is very particular on, does like the AI output that's shown to the users on the screen match the indications for use statement, which also matches how you're doing the testing. So there's no discrepancy or bias in that way. And also some design input constraints around technology type, different types of sensors and things, different patient age groups, et cetera. You don't want to go through your entire AI performance clinical study just to find out the FDA disagreed with something really fundamental, like your indications for use statement doesn't align with what was actually being shown to the user. The second thing around documentation. So the FDA has been releasing quite a few new guidance documents recently. I know the FDA group's been following that. And there's a big focus on cybersecurity. And one thing I would recommend for any manufacturers doing a submission soon is just assume that the FDA is going to ask for documentation for everything about those cybersecurity guidance documents. I know we're starting to see more AI companies like startups make AI model iterations. So they're actually doing a submission that's an improvement over their original clearance. And even though conceptually there might not be much that's changed for cybersecurity between the original submission and the new one, like you're making improvements to the model, but you're not changing how you're storing data, cybersecurity controls you have in place, et cetera. But the FDA still has been asking for a lot of that cybersecurity documentation, even though that hasn't changed that much. And also, FDA has been asking for a lot of documentation on their post-market surveillance processes, QMS processes, examples of QMS procedures as part of the pre-market submission process as well, which I'm actually pretty happy that the FDA is going down that path, honestly. And then the third topic on pediatrics, the FDA has a guidance document on pediatric considerations for medical device design and pre-market submissions. It's kind of an older guidance. I think it's been around since 2014, and it's not software or AI specific, but the FDA will ask questions on different risk management techniques and design control techniques you use for pediatric patients. So I would certainly recommend complying with that guidance.
Excellent. I know the FDA released a guidance document on including a predetermined change control plan in pre-market submissions. So what are these, and what do you believe that the predetermined change control plans do you think they'll be beneficial for AI and ML medical devices?
Yeah, this is a interesting hot topic in the AI ML world. A lot of chatter online about it. And for those that are unaware, predetermined change control plans, or I might use the acronym PCCP for short, it's a method of getting future design changes included in a pre-market submission. So not only would you be getting the FDA's blessing on that design, but also future design changes without the need to resubmit your FDA clearance when those design changes do occur. So a manufacturer would state the nature and scope of the design changes, include more documentation as a new chapter in a submission. And typically at the scope of the change, the risk assessment, controls around the change, and a very detailed test plan are what the FDA is asking for. And one thing that I am glad to see is that the FDA has been very open to PCCPs on any type of pre-market submission, whether it's a PMA, de novo, or 510K. And they're also allowing it to be used on almost any type of medical device. not just software, not just AI. Um, I actually think there's going to be more use cases for this outside of AI. So I worked for electromechanical medical device companies for years, and we would know about maybe a component in the design that's going to go end of life eventually, or we're going to switch from a component manufacturer A to manufacturer B, and we knew like 1 to 2, it's going to happen about a year from now. So now, because you know that, you can consider that in your submission and align on the testing and everything beforehand. Makes the quick change go that much quicker, less business risk of a manufacturing line going down, et cetera. On the flip side, I posted some comments on when this FDA guidance was a draft, and you can actually see my public comments on the Federal Registrar about some considerations for this when it comes to SaMD and AI. I think it's going to be a little more of a challenge to get adoption of PCCPs in the AI world. There's not as much, at least currently, there's not as much fortune telling that the AI manufacturers have, where they know 1 to 2 years from now what design changes are going to be occurring to this AI model. And exactly that they don't have the exact data set that they would need to test that change that's going to happen 2 years from now. So I think it's kind of it's a little limited. And also the FDA has limited the PCCP usage around changing indications for use or changing like patient populations or design input scopes. A lot of that is outside of what can be used in the PCCP. And I think that's where AI manufacturers would actually use it for those kind of use cases more. I think over time, the FDA and manufacturers are get to know each other a little bit in terms of how the PCCPs are working, how they're not working, and I think they're going to settle on a middle ground where it will be useful for AI manufacturers in the long term, without risking any safety considerations and risk benefit ratios.
So in terms of how software as a medical device, AI is being regulated, what are some of your thoughts on that? Is it on the right track? Do you think it should be done differently? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is on the right track. I think there's also quite a few working groups that are starting to make a roadmap and some guardrails out there. I believe that there should be more focus on the design control and the post-market surveillance process of AI manufacturers. So regulatory agencies, especially the United States FDA, have been focusing on more of the testing, sample size, rationales, et cetera, making sure the testing reflects the real world, which is great, but you're not going to be able to consider everything, I think, in a test. So being able to have great post-market surveillance controls in place to be able to identify issues quickly, be able to iterate on things quickly is going to be really important. And I believe that like the European Union's doing a great job of this. During the EU MDR CE mark certification process, the notified bodies are inspecting your QMS processes, your design control. Did you follow your design control processes? So not just the test results or the design inputs. And I think that the FDA will get there eventually. There was a pilot program that the FDA had around, certifying a manufacturer software development process, where the FDA can kind of get under the hood and actually look at the inner workings of some of this in addition to the test results and other pre-market documents. That pilot actually was kind of put on hold by the FDA for now, but I believe it'll kick back up again sometime.
You touched on the EU and the USA in terms of how they're regulating things. Can you comment maybe a little bit more on some of the differences there? And do you see FDA's recent announcement of the transitioning from 820 to ISO 13485 impacting SaMD, AI, and ML companies?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of news in the European front lately on the EU AI Act that was just passed, right? So and I want to speak mainly to my experiences, which has been class one, class two, in Europe, class 2B devices, specifically. So I think that at their core, both the United States and Europe had the high level objectives that are the same. So specifically wanting to ensure that their clinical benefits are outweighing the safety risks, the overall residual safety risk profiles an acceptable level, and that the devices are cyber secure. But I think they're kind of going about it in slightly different ways. And I think they're going to both, over time, maybe merge together a little bit. I kind of mentioned that the United States FDA kind of gets in the weeds a little more. They also, in addition to looking at like the testing, the documentation, they're also trying to see if manufacturers are following the good machine learning practices, a GMLP document that's online. Whereas Europe has been using more of a risk-based process approach, in my opinion. So they are looking at your risk management process, what type of inputs and data sources you're using to make your risk management file. What types of considerations did you have for developing your design input documents? Europe's going much more in depth in terms of evaluating and asking for evidence that your risk control measures were implemented and are effective. And I also mentioned the post-market surveillance. The reason I like the post-market surveillance side of it is there's probably going to be clinical data gaps. Like an AI manufacturer knows how well it works on these patient groups, but maybe they don't have enough data on this patient group yet. So I think the FDA and Europe should both promote manufacturers to acknowledge that fact and develop a plan after commercializing how they're going to address that data gap. In terms of your question, the second part of your question on 1345, that was a big announcement, right? Was it like a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago now? CFR 820 is being transitioned to ISO 1345 in the United States. I think that a vast majority of AI ML companies are already ISO 1345 or in the process of it. I think there's still going to be quite a bit of cleanup activities in terms of your QMS, making sure it aligns fully with 1345, removing old references. I don't think it should be too drastic for quite a few of them. I think there's going to be a lot of differences in terms of interpretations and definitions that AI manufacturers are going to have to be cautious of. Like one example is a medical device file versus a device master record. How are manufacturers defining those things and making sure that all the documentation and records reflect that transition? And then I know this is something that's really going to be interesting to me is see where the MDSAP, Medical Device Single Audit Program goes. I mean, as you know, that MDSAP program covers quite a few jurisdictions, all in one audit and one certification process. CFR and 1345 are both in it. I haven't heard of any updates to the MDSAP scope audit approach yet, or anything on the FDA's website, but I will definitely be monitoring for that. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned. What about AI transparency and how FDA plays a role in that? Can you comment on that?
Yeah. So not just in medical device AI, but just AI oversight in general, like President Biden's executive order that was released, I think in December 2023. They talk about generalizability and understandability and bias considerations. So this is a topic, for all AI. I think the FDA actually just released a white paper about a week or two ago discussing how they want to have considerations for AI model bias to be more of a focus for them moving forward, which I am definitely encouraging and looking forward to. I think that so the AI process right now, the manufacturers are required to submit data that shows their AI performance by different subgroups. And the FDA actually defines a minimum number and type of subgroups like patient gender, age, et cetera. But there are additional subgroups that are maybe specific to your type. So for like my dental example, like whether the AI performs on an adult tooth versus a baby tooth, so some anatomy specific subgroup considerations that you're going to want to put in your pre-market submission. And I think that where I'm interested to see where the FDA goes is around the transparency and communication of all these test results by subgroups. So right now with the new FDA eStar submission portal that was released, it's great on one hand in that it standardizes what content needs to be in pre-market submissions and makes public summaries of FDA clearances go much smoother and consolidated and uniform across all manufacturers. But I don't believe that the eStar summary that you might see for a 510(k) summary posted online now on the FDA's website is going to meet all of our collective wants and needs for AI transparency. There's limited text fields. You can't put all the text results by the subgroups in the eStar right now. So I believe that the FDA is going to work with manufacturers and other groups, AMI or any other groups, to kind of define what AI transparency means, and define a way of showing subgroup data that's easily presentable, whether that's like a label like you might see on the side of a cereal box, or require manufacturers to post certain data on their website in a certain format. So I think that'll be coming probably the next 2 years or so.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult to regulate trust in AI. So what are methods mid-tech teams, especially regulatory members, doing to promote that?
That is a good question. I know quite a few of your listeners are regulatory affairs professionals that are on design teams. And I think it's going to be important for those team members to carry the torch of AI understandability, explainability, having high ethics and transparency on their design teams. So, typically in the past, a lot of quality control, quality assurance, and regulatory affairs professionals have brought like regulatory FDA requirements into design projects and made sure that they've done adequate controls, testing, documentation throughout the entire project. But I think that regulatory affairs professionals have a great opportunity to also represent the patients. Put yourselves in the clinicians and patients' shoes. If you were a clinician, how would you want to see the AI test data in an easily digestible manner, and make that a design input requirement for your designs?
Mm-hmm. What other recommendations do you have for anyone that's going through an AI submission?
I think that we're going to see more submissions that have multiple AI models in one submission. So 3 to 5 years ago, manufacturers would submit one model to detect one disease at a time, kind of getting used to the FDA submission process. And until the FDA continues to evolve and improve some of their pre-market submission processes to make it more quick and efficient, I think that the manufacturers are going to end up bundling quite a few AI models in one submission. And the FDA does have some guidance documents around submitting what they actually use the term as multiple endpoints in a submission. So please consider your testing design, your AI design. You want the AI models to be as independent as possible from each other. So like the AI output of one model doesn't necessarily rely on the presence or absence of another model being in that same X-ray or whatever. So interoperability, independence, and some other advanced statistics around statistically calculating if your overall clinical study passed or failed with multiple AI models in it. Please follow the FDA guidance for that.
Okay, awesome. Um, in terms of discussions around this topics, how can other people kind of support the industry or conversations around it?
Yeah, I think this is an exciting time to be a regulatory affairs professional if you're in the SaMD and AI world. Like there's a lot of committees starting that are making more industry specific standards and guidance documents. So you might have, there was recently released I think it's AMI 34971, which talks about AI and ML considerations while implementing ISO 14971, but that's still like a pretty generic standard across just for any AI. But we're starting to see like the American Dental Association develop dental AI specific standards, which companies will eventually be able to use in pre-market submission. So if your company is in an industry that is starting to see some of those, I would highly encourage you or someone on your company to be a representative in developing those standards. And also the FDA is starting to form a digital health steering committee to develop a roadmap. So that steering committee is include, FDA, clinicians, manufacturers, a very cross-functional group that's going to make proposals to the heads of FDA in terms of where AI regulation should go long term.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anything else you want to leave the audience with? And if people wanted to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, and this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. In terms of some key points, please make sure to meet with the FDA, discuss your AI design project early. Don't just talk about testing with them, but also what the AI output's going to look like, your design input scopes, etc. Please also consider AI transparency in the design input requirements, and also ensure your QMS processes are very sound for cybersecurity and post-market surveillance, because I think that's going to be a bigger part of the review process. And then if you want to talk about any of these topics further, you can reach out to me. Just go on the VideaHealth, VIDEA Health website, LinkedIn, and you can see my page on there, Adam Foresman. You can reach out to me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Adam, this was a really great discussion. I really appreciate you hopping on and joining and sharing with us everything that you know. So very insightful. And for everybody listening, as always, if you find conversations like this valuable, please share it with a colleague or your professional network. If you have not already, subscribe to get updates of new episodes at thefdagroup.com/podcast and follow the FDA Group on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect about project or resource needs, head over to thefdagroup.com to get in touch, or feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.